the better part of Accra and gave it to government. So Accra, yeah, if you are looking for good lands for residential purposes, it is those areas that government owns, the government, the state lands or the government lands. So we had the better part to develop.
Yeah.
And that it was at the back of that that a champon decided to put up the Dansoman estate.
Yeah.
Now, at the time a champon was putting up the Dansoman estate, our population has not grown beyond 10 million.
That is true.
So he had the luxury of putting up these single story structures.
Yeah.
Where Ghana, and for that matter, Accra has gotten to, we don't need single story structures. We need high rise buildings, and we need studios to single room self-contained. Because like I told you from the beginning, those that really rent are the low income earners. That's number one. Number two, fresh graduates, those that
and married people, like you said,
and married couples.
Yeah.
And a fresh graduate does not need anything beyond a studio.
Yeah.
The person is single. A fresh marriage, you are two. You don't need more than a single
room
self-contained. But that's why I said that it's not as though the houses are not there. The Ghana Statistical Service tells you that we have about 1.3 million unoccupied houses. Because if you were to go to East Legon, all the houses are 5 bedrooms, 6 bedrooms, looking for targeting the upper ends.
The elitists.
The elitists. Then the government is also not able to perform because you ask yourself, who are the owners of these buildings? Is it not government functionaries? Is it not government appointees? So if they were going to help in the social housing delivery, how would people go and then occupy their properties? They see those properties as investment. So that is where the difficulty is. If you were going to, as citizens, demand our right, and very soon, let me advise any government that is going to be tough for them. Because you see, hitherto people would settle in slums.
Yeah.
They wouldn't care. But the current crop of Gen Zs who are finishing at various tertiary institutions and coming out, they are looking for apartments.
And they don't really care.
They don't really care. They want you to provide it. So if governments of today are not thinking about that fact, then we are thinking wrongly. Currently, when you give birth to a child, you pamper the child to the extent that you ferry the child to school. They are always in the car. When they are going, you give them drinks. You are pampering them. You pamper them till they finish university.
Yeah.
So for them, they don't know anything like hustle.
No.
They're
not bothered about that.
Exactly. They expect to be living that good life. And that is the challenge. And it's the reason why we of the United Party believe that governments of them must be thinking far ahead and to be providing the housing needs. It doesn't take much. You need to go back to the land administration project, look at the lands that are controlled by the state, and let the state give it to private sector at either free or highly subsidized, and let the state value the land and make the valuation or the value of the land as a state contribution to the housing project, so that at the end of the day, the state has an interest in it, not to allow the private sector to, as it were, charge any rate. Number two, there is a reason why we have the pension fund, the Senate fund. You see, pension funds are long-term funds, so that government can also use that to be giving facilities to real estate developers at low or concessional rates, devoid of what pertains in the open market. Because you can't give you can't lend a loan to a real estate developer at 30%, expect the person to come and charge you at a low rate. So government then has a role in there, that you push pension funds into development of housing, because at the end of the day, you are solving a critical problem.
Yeah.
I mean, away from the hostel issues, if you go to a country like the Netherlands, they have something called rent to own. You understand? Why must I come and live in your house and be paying you 1,000 cedis, and at the end of 4 years, you say I should go? There has to be a system where you put up, you know that the value of this house, this studio, is about 200,000 cedis. Now I'm paying every month 1,000 cedis. We must calculate it so that by the time I pay the 200,000 plus the interest, the house becomes my own.
That's it.
And with that, the person that is living in it is very comfortable. It's assured that I do not need to ask, we're going to look for money outside anyway. The very house that or room that I'm occupying, if I'm able to pay for, say, 20 years, it is mine. Where lies the pressure? You understand?
Yeah, you are comfortable.
You are comfortable. These are the kind of systems that we must begin to introduce in the system. And as a country and as a government, we must begin to, as it were, also double into what we call urban renewal. For instance, it's a blot on the nation's conscience. to still have NEMA available. Why should we have NEMA? Why should we have an Alajo? Why should we have Russia, Sukura? In prime areas. These are areas that the government must begin to think about partnering the private sector to put up condominium because it's prime lands. I mean, one of the reasons why we have a lot of land litigations has to do with the fact that the prime lands have not been utilized effectively.
Yeah.
And so everyone is struggling for lands. Accra here, we have not gotten to a stage where we must be building at Wager. What's the population of Accra? Yeah. If we were to compare the population of Accra,
are we more than 10 million?
No. Accra proper, that is the metropolitan Accra, we are about 2.9 million. The greater Accra is about 5.4. But guess what? If we were to go to Istanbul has a population of about 16.4 million. If we were to go to Cairo, they have a population of about 22 million. So we are nowhere, even not going far. Go to Lagos. Lagos has a population getting closer to about 7 to 10 million. You understand? Yeah. So how do they house them? It's about making effective use of the available space that is there. And I'm saying that areas like Nima, areas like Alajo, Kukumlemle, Asylum Down, North Carnation, it's about time that the government took a second look at it and then partner the private sector to put up high-rise buildings, studios, and single room self-contained so that it will force people to come into the CBD. You are a country that does not have enough money to be investing in infrastructure. Is that not the case? Yeah. That's the building of new roads and water system. You are fortunate that Nima sits in an area that already has well-constructed demarcation, that is roads and water system. So you don't need to push people outskirts of Accra where they will be crying upon you to extend electricity, water, and so on and so forth. So do urban renewal. And these things, it's not difficult. But like I said, people take positions and then they go and sleep on the job and the people suffer.
Do you think Ghana's housing system is not properly resourced to actually effect policy and also make the changes that you're asking or you're saying?
I think it's not well regulated. I think if we were to take the housing sector, who regulates the housing sector? There's a reason why landlords do whatever pleases them. Who is regulating them? Until recently that my friend Fred Opoku decided to make noise about hostel fees, which actually he will find it daunting to as a matter of fact deal with it. Because you see, once again, the issue of demand and supply comes in. The students want to sleep in a place. They are coming from very far areas. Someone comes from Navrongo to Accra. The person gets to a hostel. Why would the person insist on his or her right? The person needs a place to sleep. So when the person gets to the hostel people says it's 3,500. The student is forced to pay because the person wants to sleep. Mm-hmm. You understand? So if we were to compare that, it makes the work of the rent control division very difficult. Meanwhile, the law is very clear. But like I said, government must intervene by way of also taking part in the investment in the sector.
Do you think we need to have a student housing authority? We bring the students together. They are actually with our organization when it comes to the renting of hostels and so on, so that at least students can know in advance what they are supposed to expect to pay when it comes to hostel and so on, so that they can be a sort of like synergy between landlords and landladies or hostel owners, whereby we all sit on the same table. We tell you that, listen, between this figure and that figure, we cannot afford it. But between this figure and this figure, this is what we can afford.
That was supposed to be the work of NOOCS, National Union of Ghana Students, but unfortunately that has been turned into a toothless arm of student activism because of political interference. I mean, the executive has been able to neutralize the student union. But you see, the most important consideration has to be how well these universities manage the housing sector. I just gave you an example of University of Ghana where they have abundant lands. So who can explain to anybody on earth that you have the lands, yet students do not have a place to sleep? It is because of the way, because they want to recoup their investment. A similar thing happens on Kenya University campus. I told you when I was on Kenya University campus, where given accommodation, you spend 4 years. But before we left Kenya University campus, lecturers actually came together. Lecturers and some staff of the university came together and put up a hostel behind Katanga. I mean, the whole essence was to recoup their investment before they allowed any private investor to come on campus. And because of that, when we were there, the areas of Ayeduasi, Kote, and so on and so forth,
Kote, yeah.
Yes, were virtually bushy. But the last time I went there,
there's still a bit of bush.
But why must the university allow? That's why I say we have lazy minds as vice chancellor, lazy minds as university council who are doing all these things that we are not telling them.
So around the Kote area, you can still see a lot of bushes.
So the private. So can you imagine if lands on campus were offered to these estate developers around Kote, around the Ayedwiase areas that come and take it? That is government's equity in the business. You understand? Yeah. Government guaranteed their facility, so they got a credit facility at a very lower rate. On what basis would they be able to charge very exorbitant hostel fees? You have allowed them to go to Ayedwiase, and they are taking a chunk of the market.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the lands are lying fallow. In fact, if you were to go to University of Ghana and use the West Legon area, you would realize that University of Ghana is selling or leasing a lot of the lands along those stretch to private sector when you have a major issue of accommodation for your students. So what sort of thinking is that?
Interesting.
Now, what sort of thinking is that? We must begin to question them. People just go and take positions and they don't work. It's the reason why you and I, for instance, we have a minister for housing. What is his strategy towards the housing sector? Has he given you his medium to long-term vision? And how is he going to actualize that? We don't
even know at the moment.
So why must there be a minister that we don't know the strategy for the housing sector? We were day in and day out. People are suffering, especially in Accra. And I'm sure you are a victim of that.
I am. I wanted to ask you about the university student. I mean, do you think the universities need to have a great concern for the students that are going through these challenges? Do you think they should?
That must be the foremost consideration.
But that is not the case at the moment.
They are not thinking about that. They don't care. People sleep on various lecture halls. They don't care. I mean, a university like Harvard, they have a fund that is more than 400 billion. How did they arrive at that? Because the university engages in very productive ventures to make sure that the students are okay. Here, it's just like people fight for vice chancellor position, fight for you to be on the university board, and at the end, we don't even know their KPIs. Because if your students are struggling to find a place to sleep, then what are you doing as a university? Tell me, what are they doing there? All that they do every year is go and increase hostel fees. And even with a limited space, I just told you that University of Ghana has more than almost 100,000 student population. Only about a little over 11,000 stays on campus.
Yeah,
and it's not your concern.
I wonder. I mean, because if students that you are educating, you're training for the future to be leaders that would change society and transform the country, are going through challenges like this, which would inhibit them from actually learning the way you would expect them to learn to get the right results that would push them ahead of life. If they're going through this and you're not really helping them, my question is, why are they in the university?
So that's the point. That's why. So as a country, we must begin to give them some KPIs to work with.
Okay.
For instance, in a year or two, we must expect the university to tell us that we were able to reduce accommodation problems and also what you call hostel fees by this amount, and this is our strategy, how we did it. They are not accountable to anybody. All that we hear from them, anytime you hear from the university is UTAG is going on strike. But unfortunately, they have a very weak student body because during our time, it was during our time that we started what we call the Mbobrowa struggle, led by Haruna Idrusu.
Okay.
At that time, the university was introducing what we call residential academic user fee. It was during our time that we started paying for hostels, accommodation on campus. But at that time, the university did not plan. I mean, the essence of this GET fund, the GET fund that you have, is supposed to deal with the issues of accommodation on campus. But that has been abused. You understand? You had a government that came into office and mortgaged the proceeds from that, when it was so clear that the GET fund was going to be used to construct lecture halls as well as residential facilities for students. So you have the good concept, but the implementation becomes an issue, all because of corruption.
Your party, United Party.
Yes.
What would you do about this situation? What would be your plan?
So first of all,
change it?
The government of the United Party would intervene in the market. The government has land banks. We would be partnering with the private sector. We give them either the lands free of charge or heavily subsidized. Now, when we say free of charge, not as though we have dashed it to you. We will value the land, and the land becomes the government's equity in the business. Again, we would also liaise with the pension fund here. We are talking about SNIT to be extending credit facilities at very low interest rate to these real estate developers so that they can build at a lower price. We also extend tax incentives to these real estate developers so that at the end of the day, the target will be to reduce their cost of construction. When the cost of construction is brought to the barest minimum, then there will not be any justification for you as the real estate developer or as a university to come and tell us that you are charging arbitrarily. That is our strategy. And this one is not a rocket science.
Yeah.
The template is there. It is available everywhere that we can just live about. What I'm seeing is that we have said that these universities are autonomous and it is eating into their heads. They are deliberately, it's deliberate.
Yes, I know it's deliberate. I mean, when you spoke about the fact that they went for loans.
Yes.
And because they want to recoup the money that
yes.
They've held off other private sectors.
You will go, they will not allow you. But the government must not allow that. Why must the government sit unconcerned when students suffer? And when the student is suffering, it comes back to hurt you, the same government. Because these students, their parents are working in the civil service.
So are we training our students for the future?
We are not training. The students, I told you that the issue of hookups is a major issue on campus.
Yeah, it is.
But why do you think the students will do that? Why do you think?
Because they don't have the means.
That's the point. Their parents too do not have it. And if you are a government, why wouldn't you solve the problem? Would you allow the university by virtue of the fact that they went and borrowed at a very high price to be a stumbling block for investors that want to put up hostels at a relatively cheaper price? So this is a government.
You know the surprise thing that's happening right now. We have over 1,000 messages that are coming in, and I'm sure that we're going to be reading a few of them for you to take a listen and see what people's views are. I mean, this situation is something that you can never run away from. It's happening to all of us. It could be your sister, your niece, your nephew, and so on. The hike in hostel fees is just something that I don't think anybody wants to be happy about. And I'm sure that, I mean, if the government should take a very proactive, step towards it, it's going to help all of us. And it's some of the things that we worry so much about, especially when we take our students or our children or our wards to schools. We're going to be a little comfortable about it.
Absolutely.
And we look forward into training them to do the right thing. But let me ask you this. Do you think Ghana as a country, we can do something to change this?
No, ultimately it will happen. Let me tell you, the system will crash at a point. And reality will.
Do we have to wait for the system to crash?
No, whether or not they do it to crash at a point. I just gave you an example that the young ones coming up, they are not interested in going to live in shanty or slums. They are all looking for apartments in decent areas. So if you are a government and you are not planning towards that, I'm not sure Kwesiasu are here, your plan is going to live in a very shanty area or in a slum. You want a decent area. To that extent, it will bring pressure to bear on these on various governments. It is the reason why government must begin to have a plan. And I don't subscribe to that idea that, for instance, if you look at the project that was the Sagleme project, it was one of the useless projects that I ever imagined. As a country, you don't have a proper road network. You don't have the metros working. All your workers, a lot of the civil servants, they still come to Accra, to the CBDs. So why would you go and put a project at around Sege? So look at the distance from Sege to Accra. When, as a matter of fact, you can do what we call urban renewal. Get the people of Nima out. And let me, by way of education, the people of Nima have already taken compensation. Nima is the reason why we have Medina. So people have already taken compensation. They are supposed to relocate to Medina. You understand? Why would the government not embark on the urban renewal? So it concentrates a lot of its workers closer to their workplace so that issues of transportation does not become a problem.
A problem, yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
But you rather decided to go to Sagleme. Look at what President Kufuor also did. He went as far as to, what's the name? Around I've forgotten. Mr. These are all top things. And that is where I expect the government of the day, the youth of this country, the electorates to begin to see these are the real issues.
We should wise up. I mean,
that's
what you're saying.
We have to.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I mean, what you're saying is so right. I think that we should do another edition of this conversation. We've been speaking to Mr. Solomon Owusu, who happens to be the communications director for United Party, on the hike in prices when it comes to hostel fees And I'm going to quickly go through a couple of the messages before we wrap up the conversation. And people are sending in messages, and I'm going to quickly look at the first one that I have here. And it says that, unfortunately, we live in a country where development precedes planning. We all have all the existing laws in our status. What is left with us as a country is enforcement for the third time. And that's coming from Thomas Andor. This is what he's saying. Everybody's talking about the fact that we have to enforce the law. But when are we going to do that? And then those that are supposed to enforce the law, have they been resourced properly so that they can go out there and do the work and be happy about doing the work? And I'm sure that I'm going to be reading all of this message. I wanted to read more, but then I don't think time is on our side. Thank you once again, Mr. Solomon Owusu, Communications Director for United Party, for talking to us. My name is Nana Kwesibitia. Next week, right here at 6 p.m. on Metro TV, the Homeowners Show will be coming right at you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, we are off, eh?
Yeah.
I can rest, go and rest for the day.
To actually go to places where the therapist cannot go. Go to people that are going to forever be inaccessible. I've started these outreaches with junior high school students. Before they write their BEC, I have sessions with them where I educate them on how to manage examination anxieties. These are things that give me fulfillment.
She's God's secretary. Everything you do, Aja will say, God will ask you.
We'll always continue to thank you and make you know and feel that, hey, the teacher's reward is not just in heaven.
Wow. The PL Show is brought to you by Kel Charcoal, Kel 360, and Kel Kids Toothpaste.
Kel, happy smile.
Across Ghana's cities and communities, one issue affects all of us: water, sanitation, and environmental health. As urban population grows faster than sanitation